Operation Midnight Climax, the experiment lives on. There are moments in history when truth feels stranger than fiction. Operation Midnight Climax is one of them. Even as the story seems to conclude with hearings, reports, and denials, its shadow stretches forward, touching the present in ways that remain deeply unsettling. According to official records, the program ended in the mid-1960s. The safe houses were closed, the prostitutes dismissed, the mirrors shattered, the tapes incinerated. It was the end of an era, or so the agency claimed. But beneath the surface, a darker possibility lingers. What if the operation never truly ended? What if it only changed form, adapting to new technologies, new cover stories, new forms of secrecy? Because while the drugs may have shifted, the philosophy of control, of manipulating human behavior, did not vanish with LSD. It evolved. The rise of surveillance in the digital age echoes the logic of Midnight Climax. Instead of a hidden brothel in San Francisco, we now inhabit a world where every click, every search, every purchase leaves a trace. The tools have changed, but the goal remains eerily similar: to know the individual so well that their choices can be predicted, influenced, even controlled. Some historians argue that Midnight Climax was less an isolated scandal than a prototype, a crude, grotesque first draft of psychological manipulation. The safe houses were laboratories, their victims the unwilling subjects of a playbook still being refined. And when we look closely at the decades that followed, it becomes difficult not to wonder, what new, safe houses exist today? The victims of Midnight Climax remain nameless. Their faces lost to time, their stories untold. They were ordinary men lured by lust, trapped by chemistry, observed by agents who laughed behind mirrored glass. But perhaps the cruelest part of the story is that they will never know what happened to them. To them, it was not an experiment, not an operation, but a nightmare that could never be explained. How many lived the rest of their lives haunted by visions, by paranoia, by the suspicion that they had gone insane? The government never confessed to them. There were no letters of apology, no reparations, no memorial. The victims of Midnight Climax do not appear in history books. They were used, discarded, and erased. And yet, their suffering altered the course of history. The LSD experiments of the CIA inadvertently seeded the psychedelic movement of the 1960s, fueling a counterculture that reshaped politics, art, and philosophy. The same drug once dropped into unsuspecting drinks became the banner of rebellion against authority. Some believe this was deliberate, that the agency, seeing no military value in LSD, unleashed it into society as a destabilizing force. Others argue it was simply collateral damage, an accidental byproduct of reckless experimentation. But the effect was undeniable. The same government that sought to control minds ended up inspiring a generation to question every form of control. Midnight Climax was not just an operation, it was a paradox. When the Senate hearings exposed fragments of MKUltra in the 1970s, outrage swept the nation. But the outrage was fleeting. No one went to prison. No one faced true accountability. The documents were gone, the evidence destroyed, the witnesses evasive. George White died in 1975, carrying his secrets to the grave. Sidney Gottlieb, the "Black Sorcerer" of the CIA, retired quietly, his experiments never fully revealed. The safe houses vanished into the cityscape, their walls repainted, their memories buried beneath layers of urban renewal. And so the story of Midnight Climax ended not with justice, but with silence. Yet silence does not erase suspicion. The 1980s brought new revelations of covert projects, secret wars in foreign lands, surveillance at home, experiments in psychological warfare. Each revelation rekindled the ghost of Midnight Climax. If they did it then, people whispered, what are they doing now? By the 21st century, the tools had grown far more sophisticated. Where George White once spiked cocktails, modern agencies wield algorithms that can shape what a person sees, hears, even believes. Where prostitutes once acted as bait, digital platforms now ensnare attention, recording every impulse in real time. The methods have changed. The principle has not. The legacy of Operation Midnight Climax is not only historical, it is psychological. It implanted a seed of distrust that grows with every new scandal. Watergate, Iran-Contra, mass surveillance programs, data harvesting, all of them are measured against the same standard, the knowledge that the government is willing to manipulate its own people in secret. Some believe this distrust is the true, lasting wound of Midnight Climax. The experiments may have ended, but the paranoia never did. And perhaps that is the most haunting achievement of the operation, not the broken men in the safe houses, not the psychedelic experiments, but the permanent rupture between government and citizen. But there is another interpretation, darker still. Some researchers claim that Midnight Climax was not about LSD at all. That the drugs were a distraction, a cover for the real purpose, sexual blackmail. The tapes, the mirrors, the prostitutes, these were not simply tools of science, but tools of control. If this theory is true, then Midnight Climax was never abandoned. Its techniques, seduction, entrapment, coercion, are timeless. They require no LSD, no laboratories, only secrecy and leverage. And this raises the most chilling possibility of all, that Midnight Climax was not a failed experiment, but a successful template. A template still in use today, in places we will never see, against people who will never know. The echoes of the operation linger in culture. Films, novels, and documentaries revisit the theme again and again, secret experiments, hidden rooms, lives destroyed by invisible forces. Midnight Climax has become a myth as much as a fact, a symbol of the unseen hand shaping lives without consent. But myths matter. They shape perception, they feed suspicion, they ensure that the story never truly dies. In that sense, Midnight Climax achieved a form of immortality. It continues to haunt, to whisper, to warn. And so we return to the question, what is the true legacy of Operation Midnight Climax? Is it the nameless men who stumbled into a nightmare in San Francisco? The shredded documents that left historians chasing shadows? The cultural explosion of LSD that reshaped a generation? Or is it something larger, an unbroken line of secrecy and manipulation that stretches from the safe houses of the 1950s to the digital panopticon of today? Some believe the truth was buried forever. Others believe it never left, merely shifted shape. But one thing is certain, Midnight Climax was never just about LSD. It was about power. And power never disappears. It only waits, hidden behind mirrors, waiting for the next opportunity to look back at us from the dark. And perhaps, tonight, as you listen to this story, you too feel it, the unsettling suspicion that someone, somewhere, is still watching. The faces may have changed. The tools may be invisible. But the philosophy remains. The experiment is not over. It never was.